Okay. So my name is Margie Donlin. I'm a councilwoman here in Ocean Township. I'm also the liaison to the Environmental Commission, and I'm very pleased to see you all tonight. Thank you for coming out. I'd like to introduce the chair of the Environmental Commission, Fred Brody, who's going to tell us all about why we're here tonight. The Environmental Resource Inventory, which was an amazing project made possible by a $20,000 grant from Sustainable New Jersey. It's going to be unveiled tonight, and we're all very proud of that. The mayor and council would like to say congratulations and thank you for getting this project underway.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to welcome everyone and just say that I do chair the Environmental Commission, but it's the people here and others that are not here that do all the work. So we're busy trying to get other things underway. We're updating our website. We're reviewing the tree ordinance. Mary here, she runs the Green Fest, which is coming up in April, and that's been an outstanding thing. So, the township is really, really lucky to have all these dedicated volunteers doing all this work. And most importantly, I want to introduce Mike Davenport, who really took the lead on getting this application through, and we've been working on this for several years, and I'll just turn it over to Mike and thank him for all his hard work. He's going to give you the background on the ERI, what it is and what it isn't, and then we'll get the presentation from our consultant. So thank you very much for coming, Mike.
Thanks, Fred. I'm going to give you just a brief background of the Environmental Resource Inventory. The process for creating this actually started about 2 years ago in late 2017 when we created an ERI subcommittee. The ERI subcommittee currently consists of Fred Brody, Ken Lutz, and myself. In early 2018, we drafted an outline and compiled background data for the ERI, and then applied for the grant through Sustainable Jersey for $20,000. We then received the grant and put out an RFP to get a consultant to actually draft the ERI for us. We received 3 responses, and we chose our consultant, Debbie Kratzer. And Debbie came and met with the entire Environmental Commission back in January of 2019. Provided a presentation to us and to the general public. And after that, we received a draft report. And during the time that the Environmental Commission was reviewing the draft report, we also made it available to the general public on the township's website for a month-long period. So it was open for public comment. And then based on public comments and all of the reviews by the commissioners, we sent those to Debbie, and we received the final ERI not too long ago. And it's currently up on the township's website. There are 2 hard copies also at the library for those that prefer hard copies. So an environmental resource inventory, just to give you a quick overview, is basically an encyclopedia of the natural background within the township. It's our geology, our fauna, our flora, our water, and all the threats that those various things face, whether they be invasive species or overpopulated deer areas. So throughout my career, I've worked for the state and for the county, and I've reviewed many environmental resource inventories, and I'm very happy with this one. As I said, our consultant is Debbie Kratzer, and she's the sole proprietor for Kratzer Environmental Services. She's been in business for over 20 years. She's been in the environmental field for over 30 years. And she's written several environmental resource inventories for other towns. And 2 of those ERIs have actually won outstanding planning awards from the Hunterdon County Planning Board. So without further ado, I'll introduce Debbie Kratzer.
So this first slide is just the outline of what my presentation is going to be this evening. I'm going to just quickly review the table of contents of what is contained in the report, the purpose of the ERI, selected details and maps, because it's actually has a lot of information. And Mike described it as an encyclopedia, and I don't want to read an entire encyclopedia to you tonight. We'll try to just show some details that are in it to pique your interest, I hope, and read the whole thing. Then briefly, next steps, like what you do with an ERI now that you have one, and then time for questions if we have any.
Mrs. Kratzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kratzer? Nobody in TV land can hear you without a microphone.
Okay.
And this is being recorded, correct?
Okay, is that better?
Yeah. Now
Okay.
That's okay.
So the table of contents was determined by the the Environmental Commission, so starting with an introduction, the background of the town. The bulk of the report is on natural resources, then utilities, infrastructure and transportation, environmental issues, regional relationships, and at the end, conclusions and recommendations and appendixes. So the purpose of environmental resource inventory is that it is a compilation of information about the natural resources and environmentally significant features of the municipality. It's objective baseline documentation to measure and evaluate and to protect the natural resources of the municipality and to protect public health and safety. The limitations of an environmental resource inventory is that it's preliminary assessment. It doesn't substitute for on-site testing and evaluations, and also information changes, resources change, and so when new information becomes available or new issues emerge, that that information should be updated in the environmental resource inventory. So just to give some background on your municipality, it is 10.88 square miles, about 7,000 acres, with a population of a little over 27,000, which is about 2,500 people per square mile, in 11,500 housing units. And that's the 2010 census information. And the next section of the ERI is just a brief background of history, because there are a lot of historical resources in Ocean Township. Early humans occupied the area since at least 7,000 BC. Some of their mark is evident in place names, Native American place names that include Takanasi and Wanamassa. I'm probably saying those wrong. Europeans arrived in Monmouth County around 1600, and Ocean Township was established in 1849. The map shows the hatched square areas show archaeological resources. The information that the state provides, they don't want to make it very public so people wouldn't collect or destroy archaeological resources, but you do have some resources in the municipality. Then the colored areas are historical districts. There's the railroad, what is it called? The New York and Long Branch Railroad Historic District passes through the eastern side of Ocean Township. That's the long line on the side, and where the railroad is still. So that has been in existence since 1872. And then there are 21 historic properties within the municipality, 17 of which are still in existence according to the inventory. The land use of the municipality. So over the years, New Jersey DEP has used aerial photos and interpreted those aerial photos into what land use is throughout the state, but this map obviously focuses on Ocean Township. The most recent one available is 2012. Ocean Township is about 75% urban, and urban includes residential, industrial, commercial, all kinds of human uses. About 15% wetlands, 8% forest, 1% water, and less than 1% each of agriculture and barren land. And then each individual map here shows over the years. So at the top, 1972, and then below that, 86, 1995, and then going back up to the top, 2002, 2007, and 2012. So I know it's a little hard to tell on the screen. It didn't come out very bright, but in the actual report, the urban lands are pink. They kind of look a little brown on the screen. And you can see that the trend is more urban areas over the years. A little loss of agricultural lands, forests, and wetlands replaced by urban land over the years. Another topic that, in order to get points from Sustainable Jersey, for having an environmental resource inventory, is to cover the topics of climate and meteorology. So the average precipitation at the nearest weather monitoring site is a little over 48 inches a year. And the trends are that there's a trend in greater temperature, which you probably are aware of, and slightly greater precipitation over the years. So about 3 degrees Fahrenheit is the average temperature rise over the past century. The past decade has been wetter than the long-term average, and about 16 inches of sea level rise over the past century. New Jersey can be divided into 4 regions known as physiographic provinces. These are areas with a common geologic history and similar sequences of rock types and geologic structures. So the map, so as you can see, Ocean Township is in the Coastal Plain Physiographic Province. Then the map on the right shows the in the coastal plain, we kind of use the term bedrock. It's not really rock. It's unconsolidated deposits that generally are considered those that have been deposited at the time of the Cohansey Formation or older. So about 15 million years old or older, and they're generally in Ocean Township, generally coarse-grained quartz sand, and then the older what we call bedrock, but it's not really rock, more clay and glauconite in the older deposits. The Kirkwood, Shark, Manasquan, and Vincenttown formations. Sorry about that. And then the actual rock is quite far underground here in Ocean Township, at least 600 to 1,000 feet deep, you would hit actual rock. The superficial materials are more recent, unconsolidated sediments. They would be more recent than the Cohansey Formation, and they result from erosion deposition of streams, marshes, and wind. These have resulted from the general cycle of glaciation, but no glaciers were here in Ocean Township. And there are areas in the town that on the map you can see with like a black hatched mark, and those are historic fill, and that is where people brought in large amounts of fill from other areas, in particular on like for roadways when they're building roadways. And those are mapped separately to show that they're not the indigenous sediments that would have been here naturally. Topography depicts the relief features of an area in Ocean Township. This ranges from 2 feet near Deal Lake and goes up to about 179 feet at the end of Northland South Road. Approximately 82 feet is the median elevation in the municipality. There are steep slopes, so steep slopes are over 25% slopes. Those can be found along the streams, Hollow, Harvey, Poplar, and Whalebrooks. So the top map in this slide shows the contours, showing that and when you see it in the report, you can see that the colors indicate different elevations, with the lower elevations being on the eastern portion of the municipality, and those higher ones in the like reds and yellows towards the western side. And then on the bottom map shows the steep slopes along the streams. Soils are the unconsolidated mineral material in the immediate surface of the earth. The medium of growth for land plants and the characteristics of each soil type have developed over time, usually many thousands of years, under the influence of parent material. So those, the bedrock and the superficial geology that I talked about in the other slides, and under the influence of climate, moisture, temperature, macro and microorganisms. So soil is really important because it's how it's where we raise our food, where we build our infrastructure. So there are 34 soil units, soil types found in Ocean Township. 65% of the township has a seasonal high water table less than a foot, so that would be very wet soil. 11% has a seasonal high water table between 1 and 3 feet. Hydric soils, so that would be soils that are most likely are wetlands, are found in about 17% of the township. Farmland soils, even though you don't have a lot of farmland here anymore, you have good farmland soils in about a third of the town. The bottom shows the hazard of soil erosion. So this is an evaluation of how likely that soil is to erode when you build roads and trails. And for the most part, that is not an issue in Ocean Township. 79% of the town is rated a slight hazard of soil erosion. 20% is moderate, and only a very small amount is rated as severe, as it susceptibility to erosion. So your surface water resources in the municipality are, let's see if I can get a little closer to point out the different, since the colors are hard to see. So you have your Whale Pond Brook. The different colors outline the watershed for each stream. That would be the land that contributes to those surface water areas. So the top one is Whale Pond Brook. And then this one is Poplar Brook. We've got the Hollow Brook here, but it's the Deal Lake watershed. And over here, Jumping Brook, which heads towards the south here. And knowing which stream is which is really important because the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection evaluates water quality and then compares that data to standards for what we consider acceptable water quality for various uses, for recreation, aquatic life, and fish consumption. And this table summarizes that information and shows for each of those streams with a heading for each one. So Whale Pond, Poplar Brook, Deal Lake, and then Jumping Brook, showing these the uses that I just mentioned, aquatic life, recreation, and so forth, and then which parameter were found to be higher than what the standards are supposed to be, what year that was, the data showed that, and then what the source of that pollution is. So for the most part, so for example, in Poplar Brook, the phosphorus and bacteria, fecal coliform and E. coli, have been found to be too high due to urban runoff and storm sewers. And then down here, you have some fish that is not really safe for human consumption due to mercury, chlordane, DDT, and PCB, some not very nice things, for a couple of different reasons. Atmospheric deposition, sometimes we don't know the exact source, contaminated sediments. Another way that the New Jersey DEP measures water quality is to find out what little critters that are called benthic macroinvertebrates live in the stream. And because they live there their whole lives there, if the water is clean, certain organisms can live there, and if the water is not so clean, those sensitive species can't live there. So this table summarizes that information and shows that some of the streams here are not great. They could be better. Also not the worst, but so that's what this table is showing. Catch up my notes here. Yeah. Okay. So flood zones are the land along a river or stream that are subject to periodic flooding when a river or stream overflows its bank. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is responsible for delineating those floodplains. And it's important to define the term. We always throw around the term 100-year flood. It doesn't mean that a stream will flood every 100 years. It means that each year there's a 1% probability of a flood. So it's a probability thing, which it doesn't have to be spaced 100 years apart. And in Ocean Township, about 9% is within that 1% annual chance of flooding, which, as I said, sometimes we just use the term 100-year flood. But really we're saying a 1% chance. And then the 2% chance, 2% of the town has a 0.2% annual chance of flooding, and that we sometimes throw around the term a 500-year flood. So the municipality has about 15% of wetlands that I said earlier. That's about 1,000 acres. Within Ocean, the wetlands are mostly deciduous wooded wetlands. Wetlands are protected under the New Jersey Freshwater Wetlands Protection Act and rules, and New Jersey DEP regulates just about anything that you might want to do there. So if you do suspect that you have wetlands, you always need to get a letter of interpretation from DEP. And wetlands are important because they provide values such as filtration, flood control, wildlife habitat, water storage, and that's why we want to protect them. Within the municipality, there aren't any known rare species of plants, but there is one rare plant that a search of the New Jersey Natural Heritage information that there's one plant that could be here, but when it says historical, that means it hasn't been seen lately. And so the photo is an herbarium specimen. A dewberry is kind of like, it's related to like a blackberry plant. And there's also one, what DEP defined as a data sensitive species or ecological community. So they don't share that information because it's something that they think is sensitive. If they release that information, that it would endanger the area. But within the township, you have two significant ecological communities. A pitch pine swamp located in Ocean Township was designated a critical area by the county. It's biologically and geologically unique for the region. Pitch pine forests are important. They have an important role in natural flood control. And these particular pine trees were 200 to 300 years old, but these were the ones that they're on private property, so it wasn't possible to check to see if they are still healthy and existing. Then the one on the mentioned on the bottom, Whale Pond Brook, is also a significant waterway and natural area in the town. It originates near the township's northern border, flowing east, where it eventually empties into Lake Tackanassie. It has wildlife habitat, a floodplain, and a significant stand of Atlantic white cedar. And the wetlands there are vital to the preservation of the downstream water quality. It has a high priority for preservation. About 23% of Ocean Township is dominated by trees. 15% of the township is a forested wetland, and 8% is upland forest. In recognition of the many values of trees, the Township of Ocean has taken steps to evaluate and protect forested resources for the benefit of the community. And these are mapped on this map, the forested areas. New Jersey DEP has used information about the land uses that are determined from aerial photos that I mentioned earlier and compared that to sightings of rare animal species. threatened, endangered, or special concern animal species, and then ranked those habitats, and that's what they call the landscape project. So within Ocean Township, 11% of the town is ranked as so, and then give those areas a rank. So areas with with endangered species, about 1% of, or less than 1% of the municipality is habitat for endangered species, and then 7% is habitat for threatened species. And 4% of the township is habitat for special concern species, for a total of 13% of the land is ranked as habitat for these priority species. Habitat loss and fragmentation and degradation are some of the most serious threats to the state's wildlife populations. So this map shows information about a project called Connecting Habitat across New Jersey. The goal of this project is to improve habitat connectivity for terrestrial wildlife around the state, and to help prioritize land protection, and to inform habitat restoration and management. So it's to part of it is to find areas where roads are barriers to wildlife movement, and to try to evaluate and make that situation better for wildlife.
Like Route 35.
Yeah, and like trying to identify if there's like culverts where and things like that where wildlife could safely cross, and maybe improve. I know in some, I don't know if there's anywhere in Ocean Township where this is a situation, but like in the spring when amphibians are crossing the roads to go to their breeding habitats, like salamanders and frogs. On some places in the state, people are volunteers are starting to go out and actually like help the animals cross the road, so that less of them get killed by traffic. So that's one possibility.
Yeah, if I could just jump in here real quick.
please do.
So the Division of Fish and Wildlife actually presented to the county Transportation County Council last week this Connecting Habitat Across New Jersey project. And what they're aiming to do is, as the county replaces roads or replaces bridges, they may find ways to make passages more permeable for wildlife. And it could be fixes as simple as, rather than using a standard curb next to your sidewalk, using a type of curb called a Cape Cod curbing, which is actually angled. And that's important to species such as box turtles, where if they're in the road and they get to a curb and they see the straight angle, that's like a cliff to them. But they can actually get off the road if the curb is more angled. Sorry.
Good. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate your explaining it better than I did. Thank you. So in Ocean Township, a search of the natural heritage data about rare species throughout the state, but I did a search for just what is known in Ocean Township. So the animals that are found here that are special are the eastern box turtle, black-crowned night heron, common tern, great blue heron, least tern, osprey, wood thrush, and the coastal bog metaranthus, which is a moth. In addition, there's a bald eagle nest. Recently took up a nest in the Harvey Brook area, and there's also those. So those were the official the species that are on the official New Jersey list, and there are other. There's people who are interested in birding report their sightings onto a website called eBird, and there's quite a few other special birds that are that have been cited that aren't on the list, but they're in the appendix of the report and listed there. In Ocean Township, there's about 620 acres that have been preserved, which is 8.8% of Ocean Township. Your biggest open space preserved area is the Joe Palea Park, which is owned by the municipality, and it is about 240 acres. Then the next biggest one is the Welts Park, which is owned by Monmouth County at 127 acres. And the Whale Pond Brook Preserve, which is a natural lands trust property, which is 89 acres. And in addition, it's really too small to see that well on the slide, but one of the maps in there that that I did was just identifying undeveloped tracts as a first step in what the municipality might want to do next on preserving additional open space by just the first step was just to identify what properties are not currently developed, but that doesn't indicate that any of those owners are interested in preserving, but that's in the report as a first step. The water supply, where you get your water to drink and to use. So the map shows the service area for the New Jersey American Water's Coastal North System. So it covers a much larger area than just Ocean Township. And the water that comes out of your faucets comes for most of the town, which is, I thought I had a number here. Majority of the town, the water comes from New Jersey American Water's Coastal North System is what it's called, and it uses a blend of sources. So groundwater from wells in the Potomac, Raritan, Magathie Aquifer, which is sometimes or usually abbreviated as PRM, and also surface water from the Glendola Reservoir, Manasquan River and Reservoir, the Shark River, and the Swimming River and Reservoir. And there's a website where the information about your water source, because there are rules about how often drinking water is tested and what the results are, and sharing that information with the public. So I've included the current one in the appendix of the report, but obviously that will soon be out of date. So the website is there, and you can always follow up. So there were no, at least on record, there were no water quality violations for at least the past 4 years from this water supply. And then you can always follow up to keep up with the results. There are relatively few homes that are served by private wells in the township. So there is a state regulation that requires private wells to be tested for certain parameters when a house is sold. But since so few wells are private wells are in the township, there were only 11 that had ever been tested in the time that this rule has been in existence. But of those, these wells the water quality sometimes exceeded standards for iron, manganese, or pH. These aren't they are not actually health issues, but they do affect the taste of the water. So after you use the water, it goes somewhere. So the sewer service area, again, it's a larger area than just the municipality. The Township of Ocean Sewage Authority provides wastewater treatment for 30,000 people in Ocean Township, plus Deal, Allenhurst, Interlochen, and Lock Arbor. They treat they're approved to treat up to 7.5 million gallons a day, but the average flow is 5.46 million gallons a day. The colored area is the sewer service area, which is the planned method of wastewater disposal, but they aren't necessarily not every house in that area is necessarily connected, but that's the approved area for the sewage treatment area. So stormwater is important because a lot of pollution comes instead of from a single point source, it comes from just the general land area we call non-point source because there's not one single point. So this includes all our parking lots, roads, lawns. There's a lot of pollutants that are carried every time it rains into our streams, and this is called stormwater. And anything that is impervious collects that water and takes it to our streams instead of allowing that pollution to just infiltrate into the ground. So 35% of Ocean Township has less than so from scientific studies that looked at the amount of impervious surface and compared that to water quality, about 10% impervious surface. Once an area exceeds that area, they start to see impacts to their surface waters. So that's why that's kind of the cutoff here on the slide. So about 35% of the municipality has less than 10% impervious surfaces, and 65% has greater than 10% impervious surfaces. And this rule is the stormwater management rule has the goal of reducing that runoff, flooding, erosion, and non-point pollution to protect public safety as well as ecological and biological integrity. And these requirements are currently being updated by the state. So this slide shows the transportation infrastructure in the municipality. There are 149 miles of roads. So again, that impervious surface we were talking about. There's this map also shows the New Jersey Transit bus routes, the Coastline Railroad, and the map doesn't actually show the bicycle and pedestrian network, but the plan that was approved for the municipality did put together and approved in 2011 has the goals of encouraging non-motorized transportation, improving access, connectivity, and safety. The plan includes a 15-year implementation schedule and includes 52-mile network of bicycle facilities, 33 miles of new sidewalk, 11 miles of off-road trails, and improvements of 72 road crossings. And it also incorporates sustainable drainage practices, so that would reduce that non-point pollution, and encourages renewable energy use. And then the municipality has some renewable resources. On the intermediate school, there are 2 photovoltaic installations on the roof, and the location of that is noted on the map. And then there are also 2 public electric vehicle charging stations. One is at the Ocean Township Municipal Building, so I guess that's right here, right? So, and then one is at JLR Monmouth 807 Route 35. And without going through a lot of details, the report also covers some topics about the health issues, air quality, water quality, how these issues can affect human health, such as lead in drinking water, fish consumption advisories, so which fish are okay to eat or how often it's okay to eat the fish, harmful algal blooms. Deal Lake is notorious for having that issue, insect and tick-borne diseases, and noise and lighting. This map shows the known contaminated sites that are in the municipality. There are 48 current contaminated sites. They're always in the process of cleaning up sites, sometimes identifying new things that either newly happen or just are newly discovered. So there actually have been 425 closed contaminated sites, so in other words, considered cleaned up. And the list is actually updated daily by New Jersey DEP, so this just shows kind of a snapshot in time. There are also homeowner sites are not included on the map at all. These typically are like underground storage tanks. They might have a small issue. They're usually taken care of pretty easily without having to have major cleanup efforts. There have been go to the next. So 15 of the known contaminated sites are actually classification exception areas. And those are areas where the groundwater contamination has been identified. And this is a way of showing that that specific contaminants have been found in the groundwater, and they've been exceeded, and that so they're monitored and worked on remediation to clean up to prevent the contamination from spreading. And there are 15 of those marked on this map. The data is intended to provide information to the public regarding areas of contaminated groundwater to prevent inappropriate well placement. Of course, you have very few private wells in the township anyway, but also preventing the potential health risks that could occur if that was done. So there's also, and the CEAs that have been identified in the township are most often for PCE, benzene, MTBE, toluene, and xylenes, and there's a table of this in the report. Another contaminated issue in the municipality is the Seaview Square Shopping Mall, which was built on a former landfill, and that's addressed under state regulations for cleaning up. And another one is the Deal Test Site, which is on Department of Defense property, and it's slated for cleanup by September 2021, according to the website. So getting towards the end of the presentation. So what this map does is it just kind of puts together some environmentally critical areas all together on one map instead of seeing them in each separate chapter, just layering them one on top of the other. So putting together floodplains, wetlands. I have a little star there for buffers because you don't always know the exact buffer that New Jersey DEP will decide applies to a particular waterway. So I've just added a 50-foot buffer just as a guideline. The next thing it shows on this map is the erosion hazard, those ones that are high hazard. The landscape project for wildlife, threatened, endangered, and special concern wildlife is on this map. Potential vernal pools, which I didn't actually discuss earlier in my project, but my presentation, but it is in the report. century forests, which is also in the report. Those areas that are forests that may be over 100 years old, steep slopes, and preserved open space. So this map lets you see all those lumped together on one map. And then you have lots of neighbors, so it's always, there's always regional issues, regional relationships. These include the Monmouth County Master Plan, the Monmouth County areas of significant environmental quality, which I mentioned in an earlier slide, the Coastal Area Facilities Review Act, which a very small portion of ocean is actually in that, but you would be affected by that. Sustainable Jersey is a way for the municipality to take actions to make your municipality more sustainable, and kudos to your town because you have bronze certification. And water supply planning is on a regional basis, as is wastewater management planning. So just as an overview of how this project worked, as Mike described, first, the Environmental Commission obtained funding, did a request for proposals, hired me. We worked on developing this environmental resource inventory, public comment, a lot of comments from the Environmental Commission. And then here we are, we're at the planning board, and the next step is generally for a planning board to adopt the environmental resource inventory as a part of the master plan, because then you can use the factual information in here to then make your next decisions, with the next box, use the ERI to make decisions. And then eventually, some of the information might become out of date, and you might identify areas that need to be updated. So that's what next steps would be. And if you don't already have it, the report itself can be downloaded from the municipal website. And then I took the liberty of adding your Environmental Commission email address to the presentation, as well as, and just there's a few other things in the appendix, some resources, some lists, some plant and animal lists, things like that. And then my contact information as well. So that's the presentation.
Thank you, Debbie. Before we open the floor to questions, because I hate public speaking, I forgot to mention a lot of important things. All the maps that Debbie was showing in her presentation are available in the ERI, which is available online, or again on the hard copies at the library. Two of the maps from the report are up here for you to look at, and then the other two larger ones are using the same data as what's in the ERI, but it's just displayed differently. It's not actually from the report. Should also mention that this environmental resource inventory is going to get Ocean Township 20 points towards our Sustainable Jersey certification. So we have a bronze standing right now. We might actually get to silver with these 20 points. This environmental resource inventory is actually the first ever township-wide ERI that we ever had. Ocean Township had some environmental resource inventories from the 1970s that were done on the watershed scale. So this is a pretty big deal. And like Debbie said, the next step is the planning board is going to adopt the ERI as part of the master plan, and it's going to serve as a guidance document to the planning board as well as the Environmental Commission going forward. and it's also an important resource for the general public just to get a basic understanding of the town they live in, where their water comes from, where their garbage goes. And as Debbie said, this is just a snapshot in time. Some of this data could be outdated as early as tomorrow. So as necessary, we'll update it. It's a living, dynamic document. And in about 10 years' time, we'll probably have to redo the whole thing again. So with that, if anyone has any questions, Debbie, if you could just hand over the mic over to whoever's raising
Just
their hand.
one quick thing. Sorry, I just wanted a representative from Sustainable Jersey, who's here with us tonight, Joe Grillo. Without the $20,000 grant, this project would not be possible. So I didn't want to miss introducing him and thanking him for coming tonight.
You wrote the check, is that it? Thanks.
Maybe, I don't know if he wants to say anything too. But.
No, it's just great to see this actually coming to fruition. I remember when you won the grant, and it was a pretty big deal. And as a Monmouth County resident, I was proud to see, a neighboring town get awarded that. So it's really great to see this everything come to fruition, and good luck with it.
Yeah, it was done in conjunction with PSE&G.
Right, it was a
They're the other utility, but,
Right.
yeah.
It was a grant that was funded, it was a pass-through grant funded by PSEG Foundation through Sustainable Jersey, and then we decided which towns. There were about 200 submissions from different municipalities all over the state, and there were only, I think, 10 $20,000 grants that were awarded, so it was a pretty big deal. So, yeah. And hopefully you get to silver. There's only 2 towns in Monmouth County that have silver certification with us, so hopefully you'll be the third.
Who are they, Joe?
Asbury Park and Red Bank.
Asbury.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, agreed.
Are there questions now? Or?
On your table 3.45, can you show us again, please? While you're looking at is the Poplar Brook, and you have the table, and the information is from 2006. This one, yeah, the Poplar Brook, you have information from 2006. Do you have any recent data regarding Poplar Brook?
I guess I'm supposed to use this to answer. The column there is the year that stream was first determined to have that high value. So there is more recent data. That's the first time it was identified.
Do you have any aerial videos of the brook? Do you have any drone videos of the brook?
Drone videos?
No. Will your office or the board will welcome a drone video? I did a drone video of the brook, and I follow the brook all the way behind the JCC with another township resident, Dennis Hallard. We did the brook from Highway 35 by the library, and we follow the brook all the way to the JCC, where it is going under the railroad tracks into the big pipes. So we have that documented, and if possible, I would like to send it to you so you had that documentation for the town.
Take it. Yes, we'll take it. Yes.
Regarding the soil, the high water table in Ocean Township, there were any soil boring testings done to indicate that 65% is only 1 feet of the water table that is high in Ocean Township? Were any soil boring testings done to determine?
So the information in my report, I did not personally do any soil borings, if that's what you're asking. What I put in the report is information provided by other scientific agencies. So in the case of soils, that information is provided by the NRDC, USDA, Natural Resources Conservation Service. Thank you. They have done the soil tests that they base that information on. And part of the way they do that is they don't take a soil boring every square inch of, so there's interpolation and interpretation of the data, but I'm just presenting their information.
Just
Yeah.
one quick question regarding the popular brook. You have the jumping brook.
Yeah.
You have highlighted information about the jumping brook, but do you have any information regarding the popular brook that goes into the Atlantic Ocean and is the only brook in New Jersey that runs into the ocean? You have that information available? On the table 3.45.
So Poplar Brook on this table, I'm just trying to present a summary of information from New Jersey DEP. They do a biennial assessment of the water quality on the streams throughout the state. And what I tried to do in this report was just to highlight the problems. Other things where there is not a problem, I figured I didn't have to put all the information about that in here. But there is a link in the in each chapter of the report is the actual references where I got the information, as well as what I call internet resources, so places where you could go for more information. And so to get more information about water quality is a report called the Integrated Report, and there will be a link to that in the. Okay.
The Waller Point Brook, that is a significant waterway. What about the Popular Brook that is the only one in New Jersey that runs?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Where in that slide? Okay. Well, I was summarizing that a study by Monmouth County identified places that they considered ecologically significant throughout the county, and I don't recall off the top of my head what they used as criteria for deciding what they felt were priority areas. So that would be, maybe something that you would take up with the county. Say, well, I think this area is significant.
Yeah, that
Do you have anything to
designation
add to
that
that?
designation came from the Monmouth County Division of Planning. The environmental section there identified numerous areas within the county as areas of significant environmental quality, and within Ocean Township that applied to the Whale Pond Brook waterway, not to the Poplar.
You have also, you say, the archaeological resources. You mentioned the archaeological resources, and obviously that you don't pinpoint the sites because maybe of vandalism and other concerns. But I would like to add a letter that came from the DB, the Historic Preservation Office, dated July 19 of this year, where indicates that the section of the 32 acres between the Highway 35 and the library is an historic site, that there had been over 900 and some archaeological pieces found. So if the board would like to add, that is a very important piece of information to have it, because the sources that you quoted, you didn't have like updated information regarding the history, and that the letter from the historic preservation that I received from Mr. Rosenthal, I think is an important document to have it, and hopefully with important information up to date, maybe we can get the 20 points and get certified as silver or whatever the goal of this study is.
Yeah, that's an example of maybe new information that you want to share with your township committee and environmental commission. Obviously, I don't have access to your mail, so.
Did anyone else in the audience have any other questions? Faith, did you have a question?
I just wanted to say that the Well Pond Brook runs into the Atlantic Ocean also, and so does Deal Lake.
I have it cited as Poplar Brook being the only one in the information that I have that runs directly. So there are other ones in Ocean Township.
Oh, in Ocean Town, well, Deal Lake, but that's in Asbury when it goes into the ocean.
Right.
And the Well Pond Brook is in Long Branch when it goes into the ocean. Okay,
Right.
so that's what you
Ocean
meant.
Township.
Ocean Town, okay.
Hi. Thank you for doing this study. It's really incredible, and I'm happy we have a place to reference now. The brown spot on the map here, is that your historic significance? The marked as highly historic, the brown?
Yeah, there's like 21 in the municipality that are historic properties.
But the largest square there, is that the property at Deal Road and 35?
Joe Play Park.
It's in Joe Play Park. Is that the Deal test site as,
Yeah, that's.
because that's noted?
Yeah.
Because the property on the corner also has highly significant historic.
This is 35, so that little spot is part of 32.
Oh, I see. And do you know what that little spot is?
Exactly, no, when she asked the question before, I just looked it up.
That's probably the
So
museum.
The one, so the whole,
Probably the museum.
okay. Because we're about to have, we're in the planning board process right now about very significant piece of land. I don't know if you've been familiar with the 32 acres, you'll see the signs all over town. But we as a good part of the community have become objectors to that development because of its historic significance, which is great. We understood from one of the meetings that they haven't gotten their wetlands permit because of that. And it's one of two properties in Monmouth County that have that level of historic significance. So we're really trying to make sure not one of only two that are left gets covered in blacktop parking lot. So that said, what's interesting to me also within your study is the endangered species, because I have walked that land before they put up a private property sign many times, and there are many box turtles in there. There's also a blue heron, is that how you say the name? There that has been spotted. And when there is a property at risk that's so rich with historic and natural habitat and endangered species and wetlands, it has everything. It's like a star property with everything you've brought up this evening as being, the concerns of environmental study like you've done. Are you able with your group, or can you speak to the planning board or town officials in terms of walking that property? Because the planning board, to my understanding, has not walked the property. And would they be able to, is that something that's done, say in Monmouth County, where you have a property that's about to be really quite violated if this development should go forward, that you go in and make recommendations to minimize the destruction and still, it is private property. So you had said also in the pines, you mentioned there is a certain kind of what's called a pinch pine or something? Pinch pine. You said it's on private property. Would it be on that property?
No, I believe that is west of Route 35, if not west of Route 18. But to address your questions about the rare wildlife, we've had this discussion before, Jackie, you and I, about unfortunately the data which is being depicted in the environmental resource inventory and the data which is available to developers is what the state's Division of Fish and Wildlife has. And unless rare wildlife reportings are actually reported, they don't possess that data. They don't go onto private property to conduct wildlife surveys. So if you see a box turtle or a great blue heron rookery, you can report that to the state. They have reporting forms for that. Of course, you can't trespass to do that.
No, but I've seen it before the trespassing signs went on. There was hard to determine for many years where Joe Playa Park sort of ended and private property began. So it wasn't really designated private property till maybe a couple of years ago that we didn't walk it. Any of us walked it. I have pictures of it. But yeah, so you're saying basically I could report it having seen it and then people would be allowed to go in and do a survey? Is that the procedure?
No. The first step is if you see something, you report it, and then the biologist with Fish and Wildlife will determine if it's a sighting that goes into their database.
Because even without walking it, I recently saw the box turtle try to get into the highway, which I was glad he didn't make it over the curb, but he was sort of dangling at the curb on 35, and right when you make that turn, from Deal Road to head north. And I worried because I saw him about to go over. Then I went around on West Park to go around because there's very little space to pull over there to pick him up and put him back in the forest. But when I came around, he wasn't there, so I was assuming he decided not to make the big cross over the highway. But anyway, so with the planning board right now, they haven't made any determinations about that property yet. Are you going to be having this type of presentation to the planning board? We have one of the planners here, but your presentation is so good and I think informative. It might influence them in some way, in a positive way.
I was just going to say, everyone on the planning board has received a hard copy of the ERI.
Okay, thank you.
So sort of the same question about, let's pull it up. I'm going to try to do it by memory, sorry. So tree canopy. The tree canopy you referenced was done in 2012. Nothing's more recent? So one of the big purposes of this, and Joe, you might even be able to answer it, was that we were going to get information so that when the planning board needs to make a decision on whatever they're going to make it on, they're going to make it on relevant information. If they're looking at tree canopy in 2012, we're talking 7-8 years since it was done. I'm going to just ask the pointed question, how is that relevant?
Well, the ERI uses the most recent available information, and the DEP right now, their most recent land use, land cover data set, which is what Debbie was referencing, which is also what was used to create the landscape project. That's the most recent. Prior to the 2012, I think the most recent before that was either 2007 or 2002. So it's not something that comes out every year.
So there was aerial. New Jersey DEP pays to have the whole state flown for aerial photos about every 5 years. So they do have aerial photography from 2015, but they haven't released an update to the land use based on that 2015 data. So as Mike said, I used the most recent available, and I was very surprised that it's taken them this long to get the 2015 information out because, like you said, unfortunately, yeah, it's a little outdated, but.
Mr. Becerra, with your permission, can I introduce to the committee 4 drone videos that I have recent from February to August?
So when you say the committee, I mean, this is just to present this.
Okay.
I mean, you can share that information with whomever you'd like.
I have 4 drone videos done by my son has a professional license. So I did from the 32 acres, which is a good portion of the canopy in this area. So they are up close, so you can see the healthy trees that they are there. And I have been cataloging or documented from the beginning of the spring or late winter.
Okay, I'll tell you what, can I ask you a favor? Can we just have this offline so we can get the questions answered?
Okay, yeah.
I'm
So just to bring the
just share it with
video.
them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to leave it when everyone's done with their questions, so if you want to come up and talk.
Okay.
Thanks. Question 2, 8.8% of Ocean Township is preserved open space, according to, I don't know where you pulled that information from. How does that rank, or where does that put us, maybe in Monmouth County? Where does that put us relative to the state for a township of our size having 8.8% preserved?
Actually, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that, except that, and Ken Lutz, the Monmouth County Park System came out with a draft report, correct? Evaluating open space in the county. I think this was just within the last week. It's open for public comment right now, and it might break it down by municipality.
But our mayor said 2% in one of the council meetings. Our mayor Siciliano said 2 months ago that we have 2% of open space in the town. So he must have some, current information or real information.
I would think I would only assume it's higher than 8.8.
I glanced at the county outline briefly. I think it just covers county parks and open spaces. I don't think it covered anything that was owned by the township. Am I wrong, Ken?
If I can just read from the report about Ocean Township, it says Ocean Township, blah, 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 with over 400 acres of municipal open space, the township has exceeded both the long and short-term open space benchmarks for municipally owned open space.
That's good.
400.
Thank you.
400 acres.
I think it was more than that in my calculation.
Well, Joe Palea was 600 and Welts was 127. Yeah.
189, Jopalaya 240, Torrance.
There you go.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, cool.
So those, there's a whole table list of properties that some of them are much smaller. I just highlighted the 3 largest parcels on my slide here, but the other ones are listed in the report.
Great, thank you. Last question. Somewhere in there you mentioned that Joe Palea Park was going to be, I wrote cleaned up, but I don't think that was the word you used, in 2021.
That was
That is the deed
some site, yeah.
That's the deed test site.
Right.
But there is $1.2 million needed to clean
And that was the only information I could find about it.
Okay.
It was just a reference that said it would be cleaned up, but not go
Okay.
really what
Yeah,
it
because
was.
we're still
or
wanting to know
exactly
where you
it
got.
was.
Okay, because that was news to us because we're trying to get that done. Okay, thank you.
Mary, I just wanted to ask you, what you had the Rutgers study done with the tree canopy. Wasn't that done later than the data that we have here when Michelle Hartman did the study? The urban tree canopy, that was the event that you hosted at the library. I think that was later, maybe
When I
2017.
invited Michelle Hartman, she was there speaking about pervious and impervious ground cover.
Yes.
If she referred to tree canopy, I don't recall that she was discussing a study done by Rutgers. Rutgers was focusing on the ground cover.
No, it was. I have the report at home. It's actually I've referenced it on the Save 32 Acres website. She spoke a great deal about the mature tree canopy and the shrinking canopy during the time that they did the first study to the new study, and that we were no longer considered suburban because we had fallen below 40% mature tree canopy. I think we're at 38% mature tree canopy. But I guess what I was trying to get from you, Mary, was just the date of that data, because perhaps that could be shared and updated on this.
Jackie, I think I have it up here. If you
Oh, you
want.
do?
Yeah. if you
Okay.
want.
No, I have it. I just wanted to.
No, I meant the date. I think I have it somewhere in this bag.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Just for the record, where can I send the drone videos so that they can be documented for our town?
That would probably go to Ron Kirk's office. Yeah, Community Development, Ron Kirk.
Okay, and that is going to be part of this study that you are making?
No, the study is complete. The study is done. The grant period is over, and we've submitted the final report.
Yeah, but if you are trying to get a recertification, will you welcome to have recent data, up-to-date data that is from January to September of this year and is a real drone video documented? So that is what more real data will you want it to have?
Well, there's two things here. First, we have to do this in a step-by-step process. We've finished the report. We're going to have the planning board adopt it into the master plan. And then as new data arrives, then we'll incorporate it. So that's one thing. But the second thing is drone video, like any remote sensing, aerial photography, it's raw data, but it needs to be interpreted. So you may have video, but it needs to be classified into areas that are canopy or areas which aren't, and areas which are healthy vegetation versus areas that aren't. So there's another step that has to occur after getting the drone video.
Yeah, but you can see it with your naked eye, how healthy and this tree canopy is. So I think that is a good data to have for our township, as well as the brook.
I disagree with you, because what you're doing is you're just eyeballing it. You need to quantify the land cover, the vegetation, based on what areas are covered and what aren't. So, you can actually apply drone footage into geographic information systems to classify areas that way. There is a way to do it.
Yeah, I will do that. I will send the link to the videos. Thank you.
One other thought is, if you have a copy of Rutgers' updated tree canopy, after this has been submitted, perhaps you could include it as an appendix, or however that was phrased when they said you will be adding new data as you get it.
You mean the old Rutgers canopy study? Because that's on our website.
Right, but you will, Debbie, you also mentioned that as we obtain new documented data, it will be added, I think she said, as an appendix to the environmental resource inventory. And since this is what will be used in the town master plan and planning board decisions, at some point it would be good to get that updated tree canopy information included.
Right. If you're talking about like a updated land use land cover data set, yeah. If and when the DEP decides to release the next version of it, whether it be 2015, 2017, I'm not sure what they're going to release, we would make an attempt to update it as quickly as possible. Like the landscape project, the rare wildlife mapping project that the DEP does also. So version 3.3 is out from maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. I know they're working on a new version right now, so once that's released, that'll get updated as well.
Thank you, Mike.
I had a thought on one of the things that you said earlier about rare species, and Mike was suggesting that if you do have sightings of rare species, what I've included in the appendix is the form that you use. Then when you do have sightings of rare, threatened, and endangered species, the appendix has the form, which has the address that you would document that. But the other thing about that is seeing a great blue heron, as gorgeous as they are, it is the rookery, their nesting area that is considered important. Just seeing a great blue heron is not something that they track, that Fish and Wildlife tracks. It's their nesting sites, because they nest in a communal setting, which is rare. Like, that's what they want to protect. So just for your information.
Before the next question, to get back to you, Jackie, the urban tree canopy assessment. All right, so that's based on 2010 data. So it's actually older.
I thought, no, the one I have is more recent. You're saying it's from 2010? Because she did a study from maybe 2010 to, I thought, something more recent, and it showed a big decline.
How about we talk after?
Got it.
I'm Jack Kearns. I want to ask a question about the report and some of the mentions of these percentages of this and percentages of that. What's the significance of that to the average resident, taxpayer, and so forth in the town? And for example, canopy coverage. Are we in urban or suburban or whatever? And how does that impact the townspeople directly? Do their taxes, if your percentage of canopy goes up, does your tax rate go up too, or down, or what? So how do these things relate to the number of people who aren't here tonight, and why aren't they here?
I'm not
Does
sure
anybody-
I answered the question.
I can answer part of your question, Jack, unscientifically, if I may. If the urban tree canopy has gone down significantly, then the air we breathe will have more carbon in it, and we will have greater water problems because of the work that trees do to absorb water and to absorb carbon out of the air.
I understand the value of trees, Mary. Thank you for that, because it's something that everybody doesn't understand. In fact, I once had a discussion with somebody where I said, "Why are you cutting my tree down?" And they said, "This is my tree. It's on my property." I said, "But wait a minute. You're cutting down my airflow. You're cutting down all these other things that you just mentioned. So you're impacting me. I have a right to say something about this." I didn't win the argument. I just got a frustrated neighbor. But that's okay. Then another related question, does it impact your taxes? Does the environmental structure, or whatever you would call it, of the town have an impact in some way financially? Are we rated by for example, the state charges so much per acre, I don't know what it is, or the county. We pay taxes into all these sources. Does it change as a result of our makeup, environmentally change?
How could it? Kent, go ahead.
I would just like to say this is an inventory of the natural resources. This is not an economic assessment.
I understand that.
So,
But
it's far outside the scope of the study. So you can ask the question, but I don't think it's appropriate for this discussion.
okay, so I should take it someplace else. But why do we track it here? Why is it important? We give it to somebody who does those kind of decision makings. So I thought maybe somebody would have some inkling of what it means if you cut down every tree in Ocean Township. What's that going to mean to the existing or the remaining landowners? And that's okay. The other thing, there was a chart here about it was called health issues or something. The issues that the people would be concerned with: the air you breathe, or some of the other things. There was a list of maybe 10 things on your chart. I don't have the chart in front of me. I can't tell you which one. And how does the public relate to that, and how do they understand that? Do we get this out to them and say, like Mary just said, hey, you cut down a tree, you're cutting down air, you're cutting down water, you're cutting down rain, you're cutting down this. How do people understand those things?
Jack, before we address your current question, I'd just like to answer your former question about what's the purpose of this, because I thought I heard Debbie say that this final step here is that the planning board will approve this and it will be used as part of the town master plan. I may not be summing that up exactly, but if the planning board uses this as part of its planning, that's how it will impact on the future of the town development and decisions that are made.
Right. And if I'm a resident, why do I care? What do I feel directly? Do I feel less air to breathe? Does my grass get less water in it so it can thrive? Does the tree that I just cut down hurt anybody else besides me? Is it all appearance or what? So, I mean, what's the significance of those elements that, as a resident, not as a technician who understands what inches of whatever going into a stream means? I'm a resident. I live here. Why do I care about these things?
Well, I would assume the hope is that the decision makers are now going to have the information that they didn't have before. Like, the people on the planning board certainly can't expect to be experts in geology, hydrology, rare wildlife. So now we've given them a tool so they can reference what's actually in a particular part of the town that they may be making decisions on.
And in fact, I recently within the past year or so, the council saying we've got to get back to this master plan rethinking and so forth and look ahead as we lay out whatever the new master plan is going to be. So that instead of looking backwards or looking at today and saying what hurts today, we're going to try and look at also how we're going to rechange or adjust the town's physical makeup and so forth to go forward. I think that's part of what they're doing. Not just starting with today or 2020 or 2021, but how about 2050, 2100? I think that's what they're trying to do. Now, whether they can reach that far ahead is, it's kind of pie in the sky stuff. But if I could get that chart again, I could maybe find it. Do you know how to get at that quickly? But there are some things on there that maybe that's why people aren't here, because they don't know why the heck this is important to know or to understand. That's a rhetorical question on my part. But I'm a resident also, and I think about these things. And I had people who lived behind me who cut trees down to put in a pool, but the extra tree that was knocked down with about a 2.5, 3 foot circumference, the wind blew it over. The wind blew it over. So why do I care about it? Here they are, some of these things here. Is this it? Water supply. No, that's not it. Yeah.
Well, again, this is going on the town website, so I guess if people are proactive and they want to learn about it, they'll go on the town website and read it and ask the questions that need to be asked.
Fred, if I can answer what you or attempt to answer what you're asking, what add to what Fred just said, the presentation tonight, a 1 hour presentation did not cover everything that the report covers. And what I tried to cover in each section is why you should care about impervious surface, why you should care about pollution, and why I believe there are several places where I mentioned that the township has existing ordinances that cover things like recycling and I think there might be one for trees and stormwater and things like that, your existing ones. And then you can think about whether what you might do next after that. But the report itself does attempt to, in language that tries not to be too scientific, but kind of explains like why do wetlands matter? Why do floodplains matter? So the report does attempt to do that. People would have to read it and learn about it. It's actually a pretty long report, but I tried to make it in a way that people can understand and then learn those lessons that you're talking about.
I understand what you're saying. It is a detailed report. It's like 150 pages, 150 something. It's pretty long. It takes several minutes to download from the. I have it. I'm about page 27 or something. I don't even know. To try to go through it, and I have an original copy as a result of my work with the Environmental Commission and so forth. But some of the things were air quality. Why is that an issue? Well, if you cut down trees, as Mary says, you ruin the air, or you do something to it. Water quality. Isn't water quality important if we're doing things environmentally that infringe on water quality? Isn't that something I understand when I take a drink of water or when I try to take a bath in mud or whatever? So that list could be related to some parts. And I think you answered my question that the document itself, the ERI itself, does get into these examples. Why do we care about air quality? It does get into that. I haven't gotten to that point yet. But I think that's something that would maybe, is there a way to focus on that when you download and look at the ERI? Is it packed that way?
Look at the table of contents and see which areas interest you and skip to those chapters.
Okay, so it's possible to work your way through it without having to read all that stuff. Even with and I'm still learning from Environmental Commission for sure. They know it, but for the person who doesn't get there, people ask, what about this space thing that we're trying to preserve natural space and so forth? We're going to have a tax thing to buy so many acres of open areas so that they won't get consumed by whatever, or get paved over or whatever. And they come and they say, why is that important? And that's my question. Why is that important? Because you need to have air to breathe. You need to have water to drink. You need to have in fact, if you just get to the beautification of the town that is a community of gracious living. A driveway is not gracious living. A paved Palea Park would not be gracious living. So that's my point. How does this relate to me, the homeowner who cuts my grass regularly so the neighbors don't complain, etc.? How does it relate to me? And I think that's something that maybe needs to be focused on, and maybe it is, and maybe I just haven't gotten that far away. Let me see if I had anything else. I could keep you long enough. You've been here already.
We need to get the word out on the shore.
Good point, Fred. Really, no, it is. It is. The other question: do recent studies, such as have been referenced here, get added to the ERI as the planning board and so forth deals with the information as developing a new master plan?
Yeah. Again, it's going to be adopted by the planning board,
right?
And when the master plan is underway, that process it'll become part of the master plan, and then updated in another 10 years or so.
And in 10 years, in the past 10 years, we've lost how much of the tree canopy? Can we wait 10 years? Is this thing moving faster than we can keep up with it? What do you think? Have the changes since the last one? The last master plan is 20 years old.
So that's up to the municipality what they'll do with this information. It is certainly possible that if the town was interested in just updating one small section as information becomes available, they might opt to do that rather than waiting 10 years. But in the meantime, whether they update the whole report or not in 10 years, they're going to, I imagine, if they've gone through all this trouble of getting a grant and getting this project done, that they're not just going to sit here and not do anything for 10 years. My guess is that they and the rest of the municipality will do things.
I just
And maybe I remember that you had your hand up.
A couple of questions and a couple of observations. One, I believe your presentation indicated, and I don't see well or hear well, 23% of the township is dominated by trees. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's right.
And what is the latest year that was determined?
That's based on the 2012.
2012. Thank you. And to the gentleman on the dais, don't the DEP flyovers, aren't they eyeballing as well as drones would be eyeballing?
Yeah, the land use land cover is based on the aerials, so they interpret, they classify land use land cover just based on the flyovers.
And wouldn't a drone perhaps be, and I'm not anywhere near science, I got a 1 on a chemistry test, to put my name on it. Wouldn't drones be more accurate in as much as they're much closer to the trees than an airplane would be?
I can't really speak to the accuracy, but the same classification could be done.
Okay, so it is, okay. I just have a couple observations. One question to I assume the chair, is it presumptive to state that the planning board is going to adopt this at this point, or is there any questions and answers that will be promulgated that might affect that differently in terms of when, how, or automatically if they adopt it? That was to you, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. No, this will be adopted as is. Again, that's the way I understand it. Again, being a snapshot in time that hasn't been done before. At least now we have like a benchmark.
Okay.
Kind of, if you will, and don't misunderstand when I say this, but like if you go to a doctor, sometimes you'll get like a heart test, and then he'll be able to compare that to what goes on,
Gotcha.
From years gone by, in the future. So it's going to be the same thing. It'll be adopted as is, and then made part of the master plan. But I did want to defer to the councilwoman because I really truly feel that the town is on board with the environmental commission. We're doing the best we can to revisit some of these ordinances and look into all the possibilities, because none of us want to hurt the environment. We have to work within the rules and laws and ordinances and all, but we don't want to hurt the environment. We want it to be healthy for our future. So I just like if the councilwoman wants to make some remarks.
Right, well, actually, the doctor comment was on par, because as a physician, when I'm looking at a patient, I look at a number of tests to see what's going on. And this report feels like I've got an MRI, I've got a CAT scan, I've got blood work, I've got an X-ray, I've got it all in one place. So I'm going to be bringing this report to all the meetings that we have going forward as an elected decision maker for this town. And I know that not all the residents here tonight, not even the majority of them are, but I'll be using this report to make decisions on the town's behalf in the best interest of their health and building Ocean Township forward. I believe the master plan is coming up for revision. My understanding it comes up every 20 years, so I think that deadline or that time frame is within the next few years. I don't know for sure yet. Every 10 years, and the last one was 10 years ago. 20 years ago? Okay, we're overdue. So I'll find out more information about that, but I know that's going to be a key piece of how this is going to be used. I know that another aspect that was brought up tonight, the existing open space. We had a meeting with the Monmouth Conservation Foundation last week, and we were looking ahead. What areas of open space can we look at preserving going forward? So that map and that part of the project will be important for us in terms of looking at open space that we can preserve in Ocean Township going forward. I know they're looking at revising the tree ordinance, so understanding what we have in terms of the canopy, it would be great to see a more updated study. and also the stormwater management. That's another part of the resource that we'll be keeping an eye on. But I know I'm going to bring this to every meeting that we have. I'm going to use it as a resource when topics come up. I'll be very grateful to have this, just like any, we want to make our decisions based on the best available resource and information and facts. So this is a really great tool. So thank you for that.
And also, if I could just say that once it's adopted by the planning board, the way I see it is that this document will then be used by the professionals, the engineer and planner, to make decisions as far as the applications are concerned. Ken, who's a longtime member of the Environmental Commission, if you want to.
Well, yeah, I wasn't done with my observations.
Oh,
if I
I'm
may.
sorry.
I just have two quick ones.
Please,
Thank you.
Please keep observing.
No, thank you very much. I will. In terms of the gentleman's concerns about educating the public, we have a TV show, do we not, or station? Cable?
Yeah, the cable. Yeah.
I mean, that could be a venue.
Mm-hmm.
Press releases to the
they're-
various media sources, such as the Asbury Park Press, Tri-City.
Aren't they
Coastal-
recording this tonight? Yeah, so it'll be on.
So there are
it'll be
various
on
and
TV.
sundry, but perhaps he's right. The level could be, and most people don't unfortunately read anymore. So perhaps a more visual social media. And finally, my personal uneducated response to the question, as I understand it, is overdevelopment affects the quality of life, taking away trees, etc. And therefore, it could have an adverse effect upon the tax base very well eventually, because I've seen other towns attrit over my time. I grew up in North Jersey and Newark, Orange, and etc. And such as, to make it global warming, it was a big subject, and that not only has a health effect, but it also is having fiscal effects worldwide, as well as particularly in our country, to the benefit of such individuals and corporations that deal with coal and gas and shale. So that interconnectivity, I think, is relatively obvious, at least from my perspective. I'm going to hand it over to Jackie. Or, I'm sorry, this gentleman over
Thank
here.
Yeah, I'm Ken Lutz, by the way, on the Environmental Commission. One thing that we haven't covered, because Mike talked about the planning board and a member of the council talked about how the council is going to do this. This is also information for the Environmental Commission. I mean, we commissioned this report, and so we ourselves are going to be looking at the data and making recommendations, working with the council on perhaps changing the ordinances and making policy decisions. You brought up the tree ordinance that we're looking at right now and seeing how to revise that. And there's a lot of other data in here that we can tap and resource and see what changes need to be made in the town and work with the council and the planning board to see that they get done. And while I have the microphone, since open space has been mentioned, this is sort of urgent. The Monmouth County Parks Department came up with their open space plan, and comments are due October 4th. And it's a 178-page document. Welts Park is mentioned a few times because that's township, that's county property. And there are two meetings. One is September 25th, a week from today at 7 o'clock in Thompson Park, and another is October 2nd at the Manasquan Reservoir. If you want to look at this report, it's available from Monmouth County Parks, and make any comments. But this is, they talk about Welts Park, and whether or not it's going to be developed is very vague in here. So it'd be interesting to see what the county has.
Welts Park could be developed?
It's a county park. They like to build golf courses, so I don't know what the plans are. It hasn't been really stated in this report.
I thought that Monmouth Conservation had that. I just wanted to ask Margie a question about this.
I guess I just want to be clear, is this report going to be shown to the planning board as they are in the process of studying the 32 acres?
That's a good question for the planning board. I believe they have the report. Everyone's been given the report. I don't know next steps.
Yeah, but I don't know that the information in this study is. I would have to defer to the professionals again if they have any of this considered in their review. I wouldn't think so, but I honestly don't know.
But we're talking about 3,750 trees being clear cut if this development goes through as proposed. And knowing what we know now, it makes sense to me that, and I would think to more people that care about the environment, that it is a consideration in the approval process of one of the largest developments that we're going to have invade our community, I think, since, I guess, Seaview Square Mall, right? I mean, there's never been anything to this level. So to not have them be really studied on all this work that you've done, which is incredible and so valuable. It's so valuable, but I guess what's frustrating, Jack, is like enough people didn't know about it, because I think we've had so many people turning out at these planning board meetings because they're all very concerned about an entire corner. And I understand that it's private property, but in many other townships, and even if you have private property, your trees, as Jack says, is everyone's trees to breathe. And there are stricter ordinances. Like right now, they can take down every tree on their property. I had my neighbor just do it in my backyard. It was like, for me, having a nightmare. I woke up that morning. And we need stricter controls on on that ordinance, our tree ordinance. They should really be much stricter. But anyway, I would like to request.
I would say though that's probably something that you want to bring up at the planning board meeting. Again, this meeting.
They're not going to let us bring it up at this planning board meeting. You'd have to do it ahead of time so they're prepared. I would say.
We're still in the public comment period.
I just would hate them not to be aware of all this work, but while they're determining one of the largest projects we've had.
Right, and again, I think that the forum here is the review and the presentation of the ERI, and so it's just a presentation, so everybody knows that it's out there. You can see it on the website and all. It was written up in the newspaper, and people. I mean, I don't know that we're going to drop it in everybody's lap. It's going to be incumbent on the townspeople to look into it and find out more about it.
It's the planning board should see it.
You sit on the planning board.
As Mike said, everyone on the planning board got a copy of it.
Oh, they just want to see a presentation as Debbie's done for us.
They got a copy of it.
Just one clarification about Mr. Weiner's concern about the drone. It flies so low that we crashed into the trees behind the JCC. We were trying to document how healthy the trees in the 32 acres site is, that we flew very, very low so that you can actually see each one of the trees. So we documented since late February, March, April, and August 2020, I think was the last drone video. And we went very, very low, and also we documented the brook to see.
What I would suggest, if you have the drone video, is maybe approach Monmouth University or Rutgers, their GIS department, a master's student, PhD student. They might take this on as a way to do a GIS project, and that would provide some
more
useful data.
Importantly, is for our township residents to see what we have. Because if they are told by an expert that they are dying of disease, and you can see with your own eyes that they are healthy, vibrant trees, obviously in late winter, you are not going to see any leaves, but as the spring comes, and as a township resident for 30 years, I've been driving that site, so I see that they are dormant in the winter and how they come alive in the spring and full of leaves in the summer. So I know for a fact that these have to be given or shown to township residents so that we know what is the potential of us losing. One tree makes a difference in climate change, and we are at the crisis. Hopefully this Friday, September 20th, that is a global demonstration. People will wake up to the reality that we're facing, that we have until the year, I think, 2030, and we are in the crisis of saving one tree. And we are trying to propose to cut over 3,500 trees. So I think it's important for you to have it, for you to publish, for you to show to the rest of the town council or town or the board of adjustments or the planning board members. They need to see it. They need to know. They haven't walked the site, and here I have documented for them to see it with their own eyes what they are about to lose, what we are about to lose, what is compromised with this project. So I really beg you to have published, to enclose in your publication, and to make it available for all the residents and for whatever, for the certification that you're going to have. I think it's important.
Okay, thank you. Any other
May I do one more, please?
questions?
I'd just like
One
to
more?
say,
Is it going to be one? No.
it may be complex, but it'll be one. I'd like to encourage the council and the planning boards and so forth to move faster with the master plan redo. To have it 2 years from now isn't, in my mind, fast enough. So I would encourage you to try and adapt a more urgent sense of urgency about getting the master plan going again. And the continuation of that is that I really appreciate having Councilwoman Donlin here tonight. She's been at a council meeting, she's been at the environmental committee meeting, first that we've seen council people there in a while. And I also heard her say earlier that she takes it on her shoulders to be the person who's going to keep the public in town here informed about what's going on. And I think that's important. I think it'll generate more interest by the town. And I won't have to hear all the time, you can't lick City Hall, because I think we have a representative who will help us not lick, but turn City Hall into a different mindset as to how they approach governing the town. Thank you.
It's a town hall, by the way, not City Hall.
Town Hall. Thank you, Fred.
All right. That's it. I want to thank everyone for coming. And again, I think a big round of applause for Mike Davenport, all the work that he did for the town. It's going to be really, really good. And thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.